Brandon Cook's controversial interception was just one of 5 turnovers that somehow didn't bury the Bills. Yet despite every reason to fold, Josh Allen dragged Buffalo to overtime. That's the part fans can't forget, how a team so mistake-prone still had a chance to win. But then came another heartbreak. A 33-30 loss sealed by a Broncos field goal and marred by officiating calls that sparked instant outrage. And while most pointed fingers, Allen didn't. He owned it all. Errors, fumbles, and decisions he couldn't take back. Then he added something no one expected. A cracked voice, full of regret. For some teammates, that wasn't enough. Buffalo's overtime heartbreak wasn't just about missed calls or miscues. It was another entry in a growing file of playoff collapses. Allen's 0-7 overtime record now looms large, underscoring doubts about decision-making under pressure.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Elite throws only go so far when game-changing mistakes keep repeating. And with a battered receiving core and public signs of locker room strain, the pressure on Allen and the franchise isn't just emotional. It's existential. Another off-season begins with the same burning question. Can Buffalo's most talented player finally become its most reliable winner? Josh Allen was fighting back tears. Not because he lost another playoff game. Not because of the blown calls or the overtime collapse. Not even because he had just racked up over 300 total yards in one of the grittiest performances of his career, only for it to end with a field goal that silenced Buffalo's hopes. He was crying because he believed it was his fault. Standing in front of reporters with a cracked voice and heavy eyes, Allen didn't point fingers, didn't dodge, didn't spiral into cliches. He said 6 words that echoed louder than anything that happened on the field that night. I let my teammates down. And just like that, the internet exploded. The Bills had just fallen to the Denver Broncos, 33-30, in a gut-wrenching overtime playoff loss that felt like watching a rerun in slow motion. The effort was there. The grit was there. But the ending? Predictable in the most painful way possible. 5 turnovers, 2 fumbles, 2 interceptions, another one tacked on from elsewhere in the offense. And yet, somehow, Allen had dragged the team to overtime. Down weapons, down momentum, under duress from start to finish. But football doesn't care about almost. It doesn't reward resilience if you still break at the end. And Buffalo broke. Again. What followed that loss wasn't just another angry Monday on sports talk shows. It was a full-blown discourse moment. Josh Allen trending on every platform. Fans and analysts split between heartbreak and frustration. And not because he melted down in the press conference. No, the raw emotion humanized him. What sparked debate was whether we're watching a franchise quarterback getting crushed by his own expectations or finally being exposed. Because when you strip away the stats, over 250 yards passing, 66 yards rushing, flashes of elite-level playmaking, what's left is a guy who, once again, came up short when it mattered most. The strip sack right before halftime? Reckless. Unnecessary. The kind of play that's becoming way too familiar. The overthrow to Dalton Kincaid in the end zone? A near touchdown that turned into a missed opportunity in a game decided by 3 points. These aren't rookie mistakes. These are patterns. And then there's that number that keeps getting harder to ignore. 0-7 in overtime games. It doesn't matter how good your arm is. It doesn't matter how many defenders you hurdle or how many comebacks you attempt. 0 wins in 7 overtime appearances is a flashing red light, especially for a team that wants to be more than just competitive. They want rings. Allen's postseason record now stands at 5-6. Not awful, but not inspiring either, especially when you consider how close so many of those games have been. Always almost. Always just one play away. But at a certain point, you run out of room for almost. And then came the quote that sent the fanbase into chaos. A reporter asked how teammates responded to Allen's emotional apology. The response? He let us down. That's it. No defense. No reassurance. Just a direct hit. And whether that player meant it as a moment of tough love or unfiltered disappointment, it landed like a punch to the gut. It's rare, extremely rare, for a quarterback of Allen's stature to be publicly called out by a teammate, especially after carrying a flawed roster, overcoming injury issues in the receiving corps, and facing controversial officiating that clearly influenced the game's outcome. But that's where the Bills are right now. Fractured, frustrated, and facing a cold offseason filled with way more questions than answers. Let's talk about that receiving corps. Injuries wrecked any kind of stability. The team had to lean on short-term pickups like Brandon Cooks, who, let's be honest, barely had time to memorize the playbook before being thrown into one of the biggest games of the season. The chemistry? Not there. The timing? Off. That interception involving Cooks is still being dissected frame by frame. But it speaks to a deeper issue. This offense was duct taped together, and Allen was expected to make it work anyway. Add in the officiating, which fans are not forgetting anytime soon, and you've got a game that felt more like a slow-burning injustice than a fair fight. The pass interference calls, or lack thereof, the timing of the flags, the murky interception. Overtime felt like a noose tightening around the Bills' neck, and the refs were right in the center of it. But Allen didn't use it as an excuse. He kept it professional, said he'd review the film, kept the blame on himself. That's maturity. That's leadership. But also that's pressure. And too much of it, for too long, starts to chip away at even the strongest players. This wasn't just another playoff loss. This was the accumulation of years of being so close, of falling to Kansas City, to Cincinnati, of watching Mahomes get another ring while Allen gets another headline filled with heartbreak, of knowing he's good enough to be there, but never actually getting there. And it's starting to take a toll. You could hear it in his voice. This wasn't frustration. This wasn't anger. This was weight. The weight of being the guy, of carrying the hopes of a franchise that hasn't won a Super Bowl, of a fan base that turns heartbreak into personality, of a locker room that's starting to crack. And this isn't just about Allen. The entire Bills ecosystem is now under the microscope. Is the coaching staff too conservative in late-game moments? Is the front office doing enough to build around their star? Are they maximizing this championship window or wasting it? Because let's be honest, that window isn't going to stay open forever. Patrick Mahomes may be aging, but he's still winning. Joe Burrow's coming back. Lamar Jackson isn't going anywhere. The AFC isn't softening. And while Buffalo still has the talent, they can't keep squandering opportunities and chalking it up to bad luck. At some point, it's on the system, on the preparation, on the choices being made when everything's on the line. Josh Allen's talent is not in question. He's still got the arm, still has the legs, still plays with a kind of fire you can't teach. But talent without execution is just noise. And at this stage in his career, execution matters more than ever. The reality is Allen needs help, not pity, not endless blame, just support, real, tangible support, a consistent offensive line, reliable receivers who are healthy and available, a scheme that doesn't ask him to be Superman on every drive. Because if something doesn't change soon, this era of Bills football will go down as one of the biggest what-ifs in NFL history. A team with a superstar quarterback, with a loyal fan base, with multiple chances, but no ring. And that's not fair to Allen. But football doesn't care about fair. So where does that leave us? Back at square one. Back to another off-season of uncertainty. Back to wondering whether this team, this core, this quarterback, can finally close the gap between almost and actual. Josh Allen is still that guy. But being that guy means nothing if your playoff story keeps ending the same way. We want to hear what you think. Is Josh Allen being unfairly blamed? Or is this accountability finally catching up? Does Buffalo need to make major changes? Or are they just one break away? Drop your thoughts below. And if you're tired of watching greatness fizzle out under pressure, like this video, share it with a fellow Bills fan, and subscribe for more breakdowns of the biggest meltdowns in sports. Because when it comes to the Buffalo Bills, heartbreak is never out of season. And now we reach the part no one wants to say out loud, but everyone's thinking, what if this is it? What if this version of the Buffalo Bills, led by Josh Allen, marked by explosive highs and devastating lows, isn't a team on the cusp of greatness, but one that's already peaked? That's what this loss to Denver forces us to confront. Not just the pain of a single overtime defeat, but the possibility that the Allen era, as we've known it, may already be running out of steam. Because how many times can you crash against the same playoff wall before people start asking if the foundation was ever strong enough? We've seen this movie 7 times now. 7 trips to overtime under Allen. 7 losses. That's not a stat you can pin on a coin toss or bad luck anymore. That's a systemic failure. Whether it's play calling, composure, or just being unable to finish, the result is always the same. Allen goes down swinging. The team falls short. And the season ends not with a bang, but with a slow, familiar collapse. And this one was particularly brutal because it felt like Allen gave everything. He dragged a turnover-plagued offense back into the fight. 5 turnovers, 2 of them on him. 1 particularly costly strip sack scramble before the half that set off alarms. And yet, somehow, he still had them in it. Still got the game to overtime. Still made throws most quarterbacks can't even attempt. But you know how this league works. Almost is a dirty word. Close gets you nothing but a long off season and a fresh round of criticism. And speaking of criticism, this time it didn't just come from analysts or fans. It came from inside the house. That teammate quote, "He let us down," landed like a pipe bomb in the middle of the Bills' locker room narrative. Whether it was meant as a moment of brutal honesty or just unfiltered emotion in the wake of another gut-wrenching loss, it told you all you needed to know. Something's not right behind the scenes. Josh Allen has been treated as untouchable in Buffalo for years. The savior, the warrior, the guy who brought relevance and respect back to Western New York football. But when teammates stop circling the wagons and start pointing fingers, that's a shift you can't ignore. And Allen's emotional post-game breakdown? It wasn't just sadness, it was something heavier. It looked like exhaustion, like someone who's been giving everything, carrying too much, and watching it fall apart again. His voice cracked, but he didn't crack outward. He turned all the blame inward. "I let my teammates down." But here's the truth. He didn't do it alone. Yes, the strip sack was on him. So were the picks. But the defense gave up 33 points. The receiving core was duct taped together. The play calling was suspect. The officiating? Questionable at best. And somehow, all of it still ends with Allen absorbing the blow for the entire team. That's what happens when you're the face of the franchise. But even faces crack under pressure. And that's what we saw. A quarterback who still has elite-level skills, but is being slowly worn down by the pressure, the expectations, and the mounting evidence that something just isn't clicking when it matters most. Because it's not just that the Bills lost. It's how they lost. Blown red zone opportunities. A total lack of composure before halftime. Questionable decision-making in crunch time. Missed assignments. Risky throws. And a coaching staff that once again struggled to manage the clock, the momentum, or the game script once the fourth quarter hit. This wasn't just a fluke. It was a collapse. A familiar one. And now, the off-season looms like a thundercloud. The front office has decisions to make, big ones. Do they try to reload around Allen, beef up the O-line, and bring in reliable weapons instead of hoping last-minute pickups, like Brandon Cooks, will suddenly have chemistry in a playoff game? Or do they start tearing pieces down and reimagining what this team could be without blowing it all up? Because here's what's not sustainable. Giving Allen a leaky boat and asking him to row it across an ocean by himself every January. And let's be clear, he's not perfect. He's not exempt from blame. The fumbles, the interceptions, the wild scrambles that turn into disasters, all of that is on him. But he's also not the reason this team can't finish games. He's the reason they're in those games in the first place. You don't erase that because of a stat line or a record. But you do have to acknowledge that something has to change. Because playoff heartbreak isn't a rite of passage. It's a warning sign. And this team keeps ignoring it. The sad thing is, there was a window. You could see it back when the Bills beat the Patriots in that freezing cold blowout. Back when they went toe-to-toe with Mahomes in that legendary shootout. Back when people believed Allen was the guy who could finally lift Buffalo to a Super Bowl. But how long do you get to keep saying next year before people stop believing? The AFC isn't slowing down. If anything, it's getting deeper. The teams around Buffalo are evolving. The competition is getting smarter. And the margin for error? It's almost gone. So the Bills have to make a choice. Either give Allen the structure, support, and stability he needs to win at the highest level, or brace for more of these emotional post-game interviews, where the quarterback cries, takes all the blame, and nothing actually changes. And fans? They're done being patient. Bills Mafia has seen every form of heartbreak. Wide right. Music City Miracle. 13 seconds. Now this. The emotional roller coaster has stopped being fun and started feeling like emotional whiplash. It's time for answers. Time for accountability. Not just from Allen, but from the organization that's put him in this position over and over again. Because if nothing changes, this era, this Josh Allen era, will be remembered not for what it accomplished, but for what it almost did. And the silence in the locker room after that game? Deafening. Not just because of the loss, but because no one knew what to say anymore. What can you say when it's the same ending for the 7th time? Another season gone. Another Super Bowl run cut short. Another off-season of what-ifs, maybes, and next year. But this one feels different. Because this time, Josh Allen wasn't just frustrated. He was crushed. You could see it in his face, the kind of devastation that comes when you know you gave everything you had, and it still wasn't enough. And what's worse, it might not be next year. It might not get better. This team is officially at a crossroads. The emotional collapse, the visible cracks in chemistry, the tired excuses, it's all caught up with them. It's not just about one bad decision or one missed opportunity anymore. It's about the entire arc. About a team built to contend, now stuck in a cycle of collapsing under pressure. And the numbers are brutal. Josh Allen now has a losing record in the postseason. 5 wins, 6 losses. And an 0-7 overtime record that no one can defend anymore. At some point, those aren't just quirks, they're symptoms. Signs that something foundational is missing. Whether it's decision-making, leadership under pressure, or structural support from the organization, something isn't working. And the losses are piling up. What's worse is that Allen's performance wasn't even bad. Statistically, it was more than enough to win. Over 250 yards through the air, 66 yards on the ground, and a string of highlight reel plays that kept Buffalo alive despite 5 turnovers. 2 of those were on him. Yes, but he still carried the team into overtime, still gave him a chance. But at this level, heroic isn't enough. Playoff football doesn't reward chaos and grit. It rewards poise, precision, discipline. It punishes recklessness. And Allen's game, when it falters, often tips into exactly that. Too much, too fast, too dangerous. The strip sack before halftime? Reckless. The missed touchdown pass to Kincaid? Costly. Every one of those moments adds up. Every single one chips away at the margin you have to have in the playoffs. You either win the fine margins or you don't. And the Bills keep not winning them. This time, though, they also had to fight through officiating that only made everything worse. The pass interference calls, or lack thereof. The late-game interception involving Brandon Cooks, where the catch, the possession, the control, none of it felt clear. These weren't just borderline calls. These were momentum killers. And when it's sudden death in overtime, every single decision shifts the entire game. But again, Allen didn't use that as an excuse. He could have. He could have aired out the refs like others have done. But he didn't. Instead, he said he'd go back and watch the film. He said he needed to be better. He put it all on himself, even when it wasn't. That's leadership. But it's also unsustainable. Because when one guy carries that much of the emotional and physical load, when he's blamed for the losses, asked to fix everything, and still has to show up and lead, something breaks. And right now, it looks like Josh Allen is close to that edge. And here's where it gets really concerning. The locker room didn't rally around him. When a teammate says, on record, he let us down, that's not normal. That's not a heat of the moment thing. That's a fracture. And once that kind of thing is public, it's hard to come back from. Because the message is clear. This team isn't just hurting. It's divided. For years, Allen has been the heart and soul of the Bills. No one questioned his leadership. No one doubted his dedication. And now, he's apologizing through tears, and the response is cold silence and one-liners. That tells you more than any stat ever could. And now Buffalo enters an off-season with decisions that will define the next 5 years of the franchise. Do you run it back again? Hope that one more off-season, one more wide receiver, one more tweak to the defense will finally push them over the top? Or do you face the harder truth that the current core, for all its promise, may have hit its ceiling? Because this isn't about potential anymore. This is about results. And the results keep saying the same thing. Not enough. That window everyone keeps talking about? It's not closed yet, but it's shrinking. Contracts are coming due. Cap space is tight. The AFC isn't getting any easier. And Josh Allen, for all his durability, is one bad hit away from a season going up in flames. That's the risk when your quarterback plays like a linebacker. So, where do the Bills go from here? Do they retool the offense to protect Allen from himself? Design plays that keep him in structure, emphasize smarter decision-making, and reduce the desperate hero ball that gets them in trouble? Do they finally invest in reliable, durable weapons, instead of hoping last-minute additions, like Brandon Cooks, will magically click in do-or-die moments? Do they change the coaching staff? Look for fresh ideas, fresh leadership, something that doesn't keep repeating the same fatal mistakes in crunch time? These are not minor tweaks. These are foundational questions. Because you can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. That's not building, it's stalling. And Allen? He deserves better. Not because he's perfect, but because he's kept this franchise in the spotlight, in the fight, in the conversation, year after year. He's done more for Buffalo than any quarterback in a generation. He just hasn't crossed that final threshold. And if the Bills want him to, they need to give him a chance. A real chance. That means protection. That means reliable weapons. That means a defense that doesn't collapse late. That means a coaching staff that adapts, not reacts. Because what's happening now? It's not just heartbreaking. It's wasteful. And football doesn't give you many windows. If the Bills don't course correct fast, they're not just risking another early exit next year. They're risking losing the locker room. They're risking losing Allen. Not in the literal sense, but in spirit, in buy-in, in belief. You think a guy can keep doing this year after year, bleeding for a city, for a jersey, and not eventually start questioning if it's ever going to change? So what now? That's the question everyone in Buffalo is asking. And it's not just for the GM or the coaches or the analysts. It's for the fans, the people who've lived and died with every playoff push. The ones who believed this team was different. The ones who watched Josh Allen cry on the podium and felt every bit of that pain. Is this still a team on the verge of something great? Or is this just the latest chapter in a history of heartbreak? Let us know what you think in the comments. Like if you felt that same frustration. Share this with a fellow Bills fan, or maybe someone who still believes in the magic. And if you want more breakdowns of the biggest meltdowns in sports, subscribe. Because the drama isn't slowing down, and neither are we. This isn't just about one game. This is about what happens next. And right now, all eyes are on Buffalo.